This week, I'm speaking with Joanne Kaminski, owner of OnlineTutorCoach.com, and she helps tutors start and grow their online tutoring business. Cue the music.
Welcome to the Repurpose Your Career podcast, brought to you by Career Pivot. This podcast is where those of us in the second half of life come together to discuss how to repurpose our careers for the 21st century. Come listen to career experts give you proven strategies. Listen to people like you tell their stories on how they repurpose their careers. And finally, get your questions answered. Your host, Mark Miller, has made 6 career pivots over the last 30 years. He understands this is not about jumping out of the frying pan into a fire, but rather to create a plan where you make clear, actionable steps or pivots to a better future career. Are you ready to repurpose your career?
Welcome to episode 257 of the Repurpose Your Career podcast. My name is Mark Miller, and I'll be your host every Monday for discussion on what it's like to repurpose your career. This week, I'm speaking with Joanne Kaminski, owner of OnlineTutorCoach.com. She helps tutors start and grow their online businesses. Let me read you her bio from her website. Joanne Kaminski is a former teacher and reading specialist with 10 years experience, turned online reading tutor. She is the founder of Online Tutor Coach, LLC, where she helps other tutors who are great at tutoring but struggle at attracting students. Joanne impacts over 20,000 tutors with her YouTube channel, Facebook group, Instagram, and podcast. She is the author of How to Start an Online Tutoring Business, Making 4 to 5 Figures a Month, which is available on Amazon. When I was teaching high school math, I was approached by a lot of people that this was something they'd like to do as an encore career. Becoming a teacher is a really hard transition. If you are interested in this, go to listen to episode 227, which was called Teaching High School Chemistry as an Encore Career with Keith Stolzenbach. Becoming an online tutor is much easier and is equally rewarding. However, before we get to the episode, let's have a word from our sponsor, Career Pivot. The Career Pivot membership community continues to help the members who are participating in this project grow and thrive. This is a community where everyone is there to help everyone else out, figure out what they want to do in the second half of life, and then make it happen. Let's hear what Cleo had to say about being part of the community.
I got a lot of support, just the knowledge that you're not alone. Other people are struggling with the exact same thing, and there are ways to deal with it. There are people, some really interesting success stories that, maybe that's not exactly what I can or want to do, but and you can see the benefits that people get from different things like that. A couple people that took that positive intelligence course, I could see a real difference in how they acted, felt, and their success after they completed it. And I didn't end up taking the course, but I got the book. I put it as an audio book on my phone, so I would listen to it while I was at the gym. And it helped me too, just controlling anxiety, getting back to reality, keeping your mind in a good place. And then there are people that I can reach out to, like if I had something going on, I just felt like I needed to talk to somebody. There were people I could talk that were happy to talk to me. So it's been a positive thing.
I'm recruiting new members for the next group. If you're interested in learning more about the endeavor, please go to careerpivot.com/community. Now, on to my discussion with Joanne Kaminski. Welcome to the Repurpose Your Career podcast. I have the real joy of having Joanne Kaminski on the podcast. She is the owner of OnlineTutorCoach.com, and we're going to talk about becoming an online tutor. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Mark.
So Joanne, do people actually become online tutors?
They do. Now, back in 2010, when I got started, people looked at me sideways, upside down, and, any way that they could possibly think, and thought that I was absolutely crazy for thinking that I could teach anybody anything online. But yes, now because of the pandemic, a lot more people are realizing that online tutoring is a legit way to be able to tutor and can get, if not better results, even quicker results than what they were able to do when they were in person.
How did you get into this?
I did start in the wonderful education system. I was a third grade teacher and a fourth grade teacher, and I had a passion for teaching reading. I worked in the inner city in Milwaukee, and about 70% of my kids were reading below grade level, and only 30% were reading on grade level or above. And so as a classroom teacher, imagine trying to teach these kids that aren't reading on grade level, anything throughout the day. It's a huge chore to be able to do that. You're constantly rethinking what resources can I use. And so I became really passionate about learning everything about reading that I possibly could. And my principal noticed that I love teaching reading so much. And he said, "You're so good at this. Why don't you also teach the trainers of our reading program as well across the country?" And I was like, "What? Who, me?" And so I had to go through a process, and I was hired by Edison Schools to also train people in our SFA reading program. But after a couple of years of that, and then finally becoming pregnant, that wasn't going to be the perfect situation for me. I was teaching in the classroom. I was, traveling all over the country to train other teachers. And while it was a great opportunity, I knew that as a new mom, I really needed to rethink what my future was going to look like so that I could raise my family. And I told my boss at that point in time, I'm leaving. And she was like, "You can't. We have a position for you for the reading curriculum coordinator here at the school. We'd like you to take it." And I was like, "Can I choose my hours?" She's like, "Yes." I was like, "Okay, it's a deal." So I stayed for another 5 years at the school that I had started at. And one of the biggest things that I noticed that was really depressing me was that every year we had a 50% turnaround of teachers. 50% of our teachers would leave or quit and never come back to education. And we would get a whole new crew, 50% of them on staff. And I had to teach them everything that we had learned as a group about reading and best reading practices. And all we were able to hire were first year teachers. So I finally got to that head against the wall moment. And I was like, I can't make an impact here. I don't know how to solve some of these problems that are bigger than me. I don't know how to solve the fact that we have so many kids that aren't read to when they're younger. I don't know how to solve the fact that we have, these teachers that are brand new teachers and they're the only ones who are even willing to work at the school. I don't know how to solve some of those bigger issues, and maybe my skills would be better somewhere else. And I ended up getting sick. And I ended up leaving the school system altogether. I had a huge pain in my side. It would build up as time would go. And I started realizing that it was actually stress. I had no idea it was stress induced back then, but the doctor ended up giving me a certain pill for women in my condition that are, kind of stressed. And all of a sudden, like, boom, just like that, all of the pain began to disappear. And I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that this was even stress induced or I was even experiencing that. So I sat down and I'm like, well, what am I going to do with my life? Like, I've got 3 little ones now at home. What am I going to do? And I decided, Joanne, you're going to figure it out. So I ended up failing at 5 different businesses before I started tutoring online. So I worked for a network marketing company where I learned everything that I don't want my company to look like. I worked for myself trying to sell blankets that I had made on Etsy. I had tried making jewelry on Etsy. I tried selling clothes on eBay. Oh my gosh, I tried so many different things that just didn't work. I even sold, there were books. I love these books. They're called Usborne books. And again, I wasn't very good at them, but I learned a lot of business skills as I went through them. And I was able to take pieces that I learned from every single one of those experiences to start my own online reading tutoring business. And so when I first got started, I started thinking about, okay, well, my husband's like, well, you should go work for a company. I'm like, okay, well, let me see what online tutoring companies there are. And at that point in time, there were not a lot of places that were actually doing online tutoring. I went to the local Sylvan, and said, hey, are you taking anybody? He said, oh yeah, you can fill out an application. And then I find out that if I get hired, they're going to pay me $15 to $20 an hour. And I was like, wait, hold the horse. I have a master's in reading, specifically teaching kids reading. I have taught in the school system for 9 years, and you're going to pay me like minimum wage practically? That does not seem right. And so I decided, you know what, that's not the route that I want to go specifically. So I'm going to try to see if I can do this on myself. I'm going to take all this information that I've learned from these 5 failed businesses and apply it to online reading tutoring, and let's see where we get. And the results were astounding. I was able to get book solid in the first 2 years of starting up my online tutoring business, to the point where I had to start a waiting list of students to be able to work with me.
I completely concur. I actually looked at running a Sylvan Center. And it doesn't pay, even running one.
Yeah.
Doesn't pay much.
Right.
So, okay. So you start your business. Who do you coach? Who comes to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I specifically work with like younger kids, teaching reading to them, but the tutors that I work with, you know, they come with whatever their specialty is, right? And so it could be, I have people that I coach that are SAT tutors. I have ones that are math tutors, language tutors, you know, every language you could think of, English as a second language. You know, everybody like under the roof comes to me because the first problem that they have is, how do I get students? I don't know. And so in the online world, there's a lot of resources and tools that we can use to our advantage without having to spend a lot of money in order to get those students.
So is it different tutoring in person versus tutoring online?
Yes, it is different. And the biggest difference is that I have today resources at the tip of my finger. Before, the old way, when I was doing in-person tutoring, I would have to plan out all of my sessions to the point where I had all the materials ready, set to go, pull them, you know, off of my bookcase. I would sometimes even travel with a container, so I had all those resources with me. I didn't use a computer at all, right? Because why would I use a computer? And so I didn't have resources at the tip of my fingers. When I was able to move from in-person to online, I was able to ditch some of those time-consuming activities that really didn't make that much of an impact. So I was able to find resources where the books are already online. They're already leveled for the kids. They can just get on, we can begin reading. I don't have to pull out the book from, you know, that I pulled aside already and then find out, oh, they don't like this book. Well, that kind of stinks. You know, let me go find another one for next session. And so I just found that it was very much like you get on and the kids are ready to work. They're there, you know, they're waiting for you for the session to start, and then they're ready to work. Whereas in person, we would kind of chat a little bit. It was very chillaxed, and we would just talk about, you know, the weekend, and then we would get to work. Right. So it was a little bit more social, but at the same time, it wasn't like getting down to business right away and being able to utilize that full time limit that we had together well.
Who do the folks you coach, who do they tutor? What's the demographics, the age, the worldwide distribution?
There's kids that are starting super early. Some of those parents, like, they want their kids to learn how to read and do math before they even enter school. So kids as young as 3 years old are getting on the computer, learning to read, do math, and all of that kind of stuff. There's even preschools now that are completely 100% online because it is a method that can work. Is it appropriate for all kids? Maybe not, but they can be as young as that age, along with then as the kids go into school, the parents start realizing, wait, my kid isn't reading as fast as they should be, or they don't know the basic math that they should up to this point. And they begin looking for tutors to begin working with their children. And then we get into the upper elementary and the middle school, where grades begin to start counting a little bit more than they did in the past. And the kids aren't doing well in their classes. So you have those kids that the parents are like, I don't know, they're failing. I don't know what's going on. And they want help in all those different areas of science, social studies, reading, mathematics, whatever the group is, even foreign languages. They're looking for help in all of those areas. And then you move into high school, and now it becomes all about graduating high school and then going into college. So that demographic is specifically looking for, will this help me pass this class? And will it help me do better on that ACT or SAT that I have to take, when I want to get into college? The other thing, then we move into the college realm, right, where they want to be able to continue to pass those classes. They also sometimes have different assessments that they have to take as well. Like I had to take the praxis in order to become, go into education. So there's those kinds of assessments that in college that kids have to prepare for in order to do well and go into their area of choice. And then we have adults that go on into tutoring as well. There's something that they specifically want to learn. Maybe they didn't learn how to read when they were younger and they're really serious about being able to want to read now, or they're going on to, they want to, start up college and they want to make sure that they're able to pass the test in order to be able to do that. Or maybe they were a high school dropout and they want to be able to pass the GRE or one of those kinds of tests, right? So all over the world, all ages are looking to be helped in the areas that people are struggling in.
Now, if I wanted to be a tutor, but I've never been a tutor before. In fact, I've never been in the education system before. Do you find people do that?
They do. And I would have to say, don't allow this idea of imposter syndrome to stop you from moving forward. If you feel in your heart that you could help someone, right? This is always being about 10 steps ahead of the person that you want to be able to help. And so, a lot of the things you can learn, but you already know at this point of life what you're good at explaining to others and what you're not. And so that's where it really becomes important, because a tutoring relationship and a teaching relationship are completely different, and people mix them up all of the time. While a lot of teachers become tutors, anybody can become a tutor, right? Because what I need to be able to do is I need to look at where is the struggle that the child is having, and how can I close that gap for them? How can I make them understand it? Now, there are some people who kind of dive into like the interventionist type of model where, a kid is like, I work with kids that have dyslexia and they have all these kinds of things. I wouldn't suggest, if you've never worked with kids with dyslexia or kids with, those kinds of reading challenges, that you're like, I'm going to be a dyslexia therapist. No, there's certifications that you need to go through in order to do that. There's education that you need to go through to do that. But could you help a child who is struggling with reading? Sure. Would you be charging the same amount of money as somebody who has spent their entire career helping kids that are struggling with reading? Probably not. But you have to just think about, what would I be able to do? What would I be able to offer to my clients? There's different types of tutors. I could be a homework helper, right? I just take a look at the homework problems that you're struggling with, and I can help, describe, different ways to approach that specific problem, right? Or I could be like a study coach in a way, right? Where somebody is really struggling with studying for tests and they just need an accountability partner that's really going to, hold into them each night to study in an effective manner and learn the stuff that they need to learn in school, right? So you just have to think about, like, what approach do you kind of want to go at this from? Do you want to go at it from the expert point of view, which some of you might be an expert depending on what your background is, right? Like you had mentioned that you were in the school system, you taught math, and you were teaching algebra, right? So you could easily, go on in and teach algebra again, now that you connected yourself again with those different ways of teaching algebra, where you could easily help kids in algebra. But, a lot of us, if we don't use it, we lose it. Right. And so we have to go back and teach it to ourselves. So start there. If you're like, I'm not an expert really in anything. Well, you know what? Nobody is an expert at the end of the day. There's always more information to learn. So go to the places where you can start learning to be good in that area and be able to help the people that you want to serve.
One of the things I always talk with people is get very clear on who you want to help.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
How do you want to help them? Mm-hmm. And will they accept the help that you want to give?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. That's absolutely huge. And the other thing is, don't approach it from the me point of view. So when a lot of people start marketing, every tutor does this on the planet. I did it too. I looked back at one of my very first websites, and it was all about Joanne Kaminski and how incredible she was. This is, the education that she got. This is how many years that she taught in the school system. I was listed in like these national publications. All of this kind of stuff was all about how amazing Joanne Kaminski is. But at the end of the day, that is not what is going to sell the services for tutoring and getting clients. It's all about being empathetic with what your ideal student, who they are, what they're going through, and how can you be the solution to that problem. And when you approach it from that point of view, so many more people want to work with you and they feel like you get what they're going through. So always think about what all of that marketing that you're already going to do come from their side of view, not your own side of view.
Quick interruption. If you are enjoying this podcast, please rate it and review it on whatever podcast player you are using. And more importantly, would you mind telling a friend? Thanks, and back to the podcast episode. So, how do people get clients? How do they find students?
You know what? There are so many ways to be able to get students that people become overwhelmed with all of the possibilities. There's always the good, tried and true, create a flyer, put up bandit signs, network with people that you already know that possibly are in education or have kids that are of the age that you want to be able to help, right? All of those kinds of things can help to be able to get clients. Word of mouth is huge, and you can actually spike word of mouth before you even get clients just by telling people what it is that you do. The other thing that you can also do online, there's a million different ways online that you can be able to get students. First, though, just make sure you set up a simple website. It doesn't have to be anything. Your website is going to change a million times over. Do not buy business cards, okay? You're not that professional. People don't need your business card. I'm going to tell you the one thing that everybody makes this mistake. They're like, oh, I got to buy business cards. All right, they're really cheap on Vistaprint. Let's go. And then they change their website URL. They, change their marketing message, and all of those, business cards, they just get tossed in the garbage for the most part because they're useless. So instead, let's say you're at the gas station, right? And you're filling on up and you go on in to pay. And you happen to have a conversation with somebody in line about what it is that you do. Like, this really happened to me. I was at the gas station and I was paying, and I couldn't pull up the Quick Trip app. So I'm just sitting here and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm spelling quick wrong. I'm like, I don't know why I'm spelling this wrong. Like, I'm a reading tutor. I should be able to do this quickly. And the lady looks at me and she's like, you're a reading tutor? And I wasn't doing it to get attention for what I do. But she's like, my daughter's struggling with reading. And I was like, oh my gosh, I would love to learn more about that. There is a really long line back here though, and I don't want to stop you from doing your job. Would it be okay if I contact you later? I said, can you write down your email address or your phone number where I can connect with you? And she did. She handed it to me. And guess what happened? They turned into a client because I took action now. I took their information. I flipped the business card, on the other side, right? And I grabbed their information. I got back with them, and then I was in control. When you give a business card to somebody else, might end up on their dresser, might end up like in their pocket, tossed away. So I definitely don't, if you're ever going to be networking with people and they're like, do you have a business card? Just say, you know what? I would love to give you them. I'm all out right now, but can I grab your email or your phone number so I can contact you later on tonight? You will get a much better response from people than the old way. Online, we've got all kinds of social media that we can begin utilizing. We've got Facebook, we've got Instagram, you've got YouTube, you've got Twitter, Snapchat, all these different places you want to think about. And this is where it really comes important, Mark, to know who your ideal client is, right? Because your ideal client doesn't hang out on every single one of those platforms. My kids right now, my own personal kids who are in high school, are not on Facebook, right? But they are on Instagram. They are on Snapchat. But where are their parents? So the parents are the ones that I'm actually marketing to, right? If I'm going to be working with younger kids. So I need to be on that Facebook platform so that they can find me. I can join groups. I can start my own group, all these things. And all I have to do is just start with this one simple mantra. I am here to be of service. How could I be of service to my ideal client? What is it that they're looking for right now? What are the biggest problems? Could I create content that would help solve some of those biggest problems that they feel like they have? Whether it be live streaming or blogging or podcasts, all of these things add value. And the more that people see you, they automatically start turning to you as the expert.
Yeah, you brought up the important point that most people don't understand. You're not marketing to the kids.
Right.
You're marketing to the parents because the parents are the ones who are going to pay.
Now, things do change as they get into high school and college. There's a slight shift in this. Parents may still be part of the process. I have seen kids actually ask their parents for tutoring from a specific tutor. So It begins to shift around that age range.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. It's one of the things I learned when I did nonprofit work, and I worked at the Jewish Community Center of Austin. When the senior program would come in, you didn't market to the seniors, you market to their kids because it's the kids who are making the decisions. So it's interesting. So how do you help prospective coaches or tutors become tutors?
First, we figure out who's your ideal client that you want to be able to work with. And we narrow it down because everybody's like, but I love teaching these 5 different things. What they don't realize, and there are really, and people have to decide like which path they want to go, right? Because there's 3 paths for tutoring. I can work for a company, know that I'm going to make significantly less. The company is going to make 60 to 70% profit on me for my services. I can be found on a platform. They are going to take 25 to 30% of my profit. Or I can work solo. And this is the big group of people that I help. The people that want to go solo, they don't want to share the profits with these bigger companies and they want to make a name for themselves. Those are the people that I help to be able to serve the people they're meant to serve. And so a lot of retired teachers will come to me for help because they're like, well, I know how to teach really well, but I don't specifically know how to get my students. And so I teach them, okay, well, let's narrow it down. Who do you love teaching the most? And so if they're like, well, I like reading and math, I'm like, well, you can do both. I'm not saying you can't, but choose one for marketing. Because what kids are going through with math are different problems than what kids are receiving for reading, right? Kids' readings, their identity is actually hooked into their reading level. Like they will feel they're either smart or dumb based off of if they can read or cannot read. That is not always the case with math. It's like, might not be math minded, right? So it's different words that we use when we describe the problem. So we have to identify who do we want to market to so people can hear us. If I just say, I can help your child with reading and math, I'm sorry, but you're not going to really stick out in their mind. So I teach them how to go through what's called an empathy chart. I want you to come on up with things that you hear, you feel, you see, you think they're saying, what are their dreams? What are their fears? You write it all down, and then you begin getting clear on words you can actually use that are going to help them. So for me, with kids that are struggling with reading, parents are really scared that if they can't learn to read, then that means that they're not going to be able to graduate from high school. And if they can't graduate from high school, they can't go to college. And if they can't go to college, they're going to be living at home for the rest of their lives or end up homeless. They literally go through these steps inside of their head. When I know what those steps are that they're going through their head, I can meet them there. And I can create marketing that says, look, if you've ever thought inside of your head that your child is not going to go to college because they're struggling with reading today, I get it. Right. And I can now come at it from using the types of words that they're actually saying and thinking and feeling so that people, I'm not just saying out there, hey, I'm taking on students right now and helping kids with reading, or I'm helping kids with math, or I'm helping kids that want to score well on the ACT. That's great that you can do that. And people who already know you might take you up on it, but somebody who doesn't know you yet online at all, they need more than that. They need to be able to research you and find you and be able to, see testimonials and these kinds of things. Now, don't worry if you don't have any testimonials yet, because you can get recommendations on LinkedIn. A recommendation is very different than a testimonial. Right? A recommendation is people who've worked with you that can talk about your character, right? It has nothing to do with if you can help in the area that you tutor or not. So you can create that LinkedIn profile that then ask people that you've had experience with in the past if they would be willing to write you a recommendation. And the best way to do this is write them a recommendation and then ask them if they'd be willing to write you a recommendation. Everybody loves getting recommendations, right? And you can start with that in the beginning while you build up your clientele and get your own testimonials for your tutoring.
Joanne, are some of your coaches, tutors, are they digital nomads?
Oh my gosh, yes. This is such an incredible opportunity for people that are digital nomads, because I had one tutor that she had just gotten married. She didn't have kids yet. And she was like, you know what? We're just going to travel the country in a van. And so she did. Her husband ended up creating this amazing van that they'd be able to live in for the next year and be able to travel around while she was able to work with her students all online. And thank goodness for the pandemic, because now people are more open-minded to doing online than ever have been before. So it's a great opportunity for people who want to travel. The only thing you have to pay attention to are time zones, and getting students in the time zones that are ideal for your specific situation.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question. I mean, I live out here in Guadalajara, outside of Guadalajara, and we're in the central time zone.
Yep.
And when we decided to move, I wanted to stay within the US time zones. But what about technology? What technology do they need to have?
Yeah, two basic things. You just need to have solid Wi-Fi and a good computer. If you have those two things, you can make anything else work. Some additional tools that people like to have are, they might want to have a writing board. I can't really show it to you, but it has a pen where they can write and they can do all like their math problems on it. And the child can see them writing as they are going about showing the problems. Some people like to use tools like that. Some people can just use the mouse that's on their computer and it's enough. That's all that they need. So it just depends on, there'll be some specific tools depending on what you're tutoring. Possibly you want a nice microphone, but sometimes the computers, they come with a really good microphone, so it's not necessary. But you do need to have a webcam. A lot of computers do come with a webcam. However, it might not be a quality webcam. So just check it on out and see if your specific camera is quality or not. I also like to add on in some kind of form of lighting. You want to make sure that while you're doing your tutoring that you are lit up in some way so people can see your face. Nothing worse than working with a tutor that is like completely in the dark. It feels weird for the student. Even when you look at yourself there, it's like you can't even see your own face and you're like, oh, it just feels gloomy and dark. And so you just want to make sure you have some good lighting. But if you're going to be traveling, a lot of people are really open-minded to whatever the circumstances are. If you are going to, let's say you're going to be in a busier place, make sure that you have noise reducing headsets. So like the AirPods that they have now, I can't remember what level it is, but they're like $200 or $300 for these AirPods that you can get. It will actually decrease the amount of noise around you so that people can hear you. And those are great. Whenever I'm traveling, I make sure to bring mine with me and do my tutoring that way versus the headsets that I have on right now, which are just regular headsets. Do you need headsets? No, you absolutely don't need headsets. I specifically tutor reading. I need to hear the sounds that kids are making. So I prefer headsets, but I know lots of other tutors, they don't use any headsets whatsoever, and it works for them. You just have to take into consideration, like, what is the noise level around me? If you have a nice, quiet environment that you're doing tutoring, you don't have to worry about headsets so much. But if you're going to be in some, in some louder areas, you definitely want to have the noise reducing ones.
Yeah, there's no question. Some of the lighting now has gotten very interesting and very inexpensive.
Yeah.
We had a house sitter who is a psychologist or a therapist, and she had a little ring light that literally suctioned onto the back of her laptop.
Yep.
And it worked very well.
I know. Isn't that crazy?
So, and that was, believe it or not, her niece gave it to her before she came down. And it worked out very well.
Yes.
Similarly, yes, I'm sorry. I'm a big believer in getting a good microphone. And having good audio. When I originally started recording my audiobooks, and I did a lot of online training, I used to do it in my closet.
Yes. I've heard lots of people who use that strategy, even for like Instagram reels and those kinds of videos where it's just like a plain white wall behind them versus something that is like messy or unorganized. And that helps too. And it just depends, podcasts the audio is extremely important. Audiobooks, your audio is extremely important. With tutoring, you just have to, as long as you can they can hear you and it's all good. I have even done audio. Okay. So I've had sometimes where like Zoom, for whatever reason, they can't get the audio to work on the other side. Do you know what we've done? This is like my little hack. We called on the telephone and we did the tutoring that way. Like all I needed to do is be able to hear them so they could see my screen, and it totally worked.
What's telephone?
That cell phone thing that people carry around.
Okay. Joanne, so how do you help people? What services do you offer?
Well, we've got our Jumpstart Your Online Tutoring Business Masterclass, where we actually bring you through the whole process of being able to get your first student. And the reason that we've made the goal just one student in the very beginning is because our belief is that if you are able to get one student, you'll be able to get a whole bunch more. So it's putting all the pieces and best practices into your business so that you know how to collect payment, you know how to get your students. You also cover the mindset of how to start a business, because if you've been used to getting a job, and you haven't been used to starting your own business, the mindset is different. So we work on that along with coaches. I also have, for people that are just like, I'm just kind of like diving on into this, you can go to Amazon and check out my book. It's called How to Start an Online Tutoring Business and Making 4 to 5 Figures a Month. 4 to 5 figures means like 4 digits, like 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5 figures a month means like 10,000, 11,000, 12,000, 13,000. So we have people all around, from people that are just kind of like putting their toe in the water to people that are, they've been doing this for years, that come and take a look at, how could they do what they're doing better.
Joanne, this has been really helpful. If someone wanted to reach out and touch you, how can they find you?
Absolutely. Well, I have the #1 Facebook group on the planet for online tutors, and it's called the Ultimate Support Group for Online Tutors. That is one way that you'll be able to get to me, because once you join that group, you'll have access to me and my messenger, and you can directly message me through Facebook. You can also find me the old-fashioned way, Joanne Kaminski on Facebook Messenger, or you can email me at jbkaminski at gmail.com.
But you also have a YouTube and a website.
I do. Yes. So my YouTube channel is just by my name, youtube.com/Joanne Kaminski. And I actually share so much free content there for people to get started. Everybody's in different levels. Like some people are able to they binge watch my YouTube channel and before they ever even move forward with our services. And I think that's awesome, because you're really making sure that the what we offer is of value, right? And that you're going to get the most out of it before you go on in and decide to like purchase even like a course or a book or any of that kind of stuff. It's a great place to check out other tutors in the industry so you can see the variety that we have, that it's not just, reading tutors or math tutors that are in there. There's all kinds of tutors inside of our community, and they are getting results. And we feature their stories all the time inside of there. Sometimes we need to hear those stories to realize, wait, this could work for me.
Yeah, reminds me of my own online community where I'm working on getting people to go, what? You can do that?
Yeah.
Right? Because
Yes.
I'm sure you have kinds of tutors that your people going, you can tutor folks to do what?
Right. Oh, I know. There's so many different things, right? So many different things. And, and some people, they call it coaching. Some people call it tutoring. Some people call it intervention. There's lots of different names, but at the end of the day, you could tutor just about anything. We have people who tutor musical instruments. This is the most interesting one I find. The tabla. I didn't even know what a tabla was beforehand, but it is a specific Indian drum that kids can learn to play. And that's what they focus on tutoring kids with.
Well, Joanne, this has been great. Thank you very, very much for being on the Repurpose Your Career podcast.
Awesome. And thank you so much for having me. I know that this can be a great career for people that are looking at it, and it doesn't have to be as hard as you think it is with the support and the help from the right people.
Let me know what you thought of that. You can email me with your thoughts at podcast@careerpivot.com. Take a moment, go to careerpivot.com, sign up for the weekly Career Pivot Insights newsletter, which is sent out every Sunday. You'll get a weekly update on this podcast, white papers, and other blog posts. While there, do not forget to check out the Career Pivot community, which can be found at careerpivot.com/community. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Look for Career Pivot on Facebook and LinkedIn. You'll also find me on Twitter @CareerPivot. Thank you for listening all the way to the end of the Repurpose Your Career podcast. You will find all the show notes at careerpivot.com/episode-257. You can also subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Podbeam, Overcast, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, and lots of other places where podcasts can be found. In fact, this podcast can be found on the Repurpose Your Career podcast channel on YouTube. I hope to see you next Monday for another episode of Repurpose Your Career podcast.